Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as people are logging in and coming into our space today. We're very, very privileged and happy to be here together. My name is Michal Abramoff. I am the Shlicha, the Israeli emissary here at Central Synagogue. And we are here in session 4 of our series of Prospects for Peace. With an organization called A Land for All. And we're very, very excited to have our speakers here today, and we're going to hear from them shortly. But before we start, as we're all getting situated and getting ready, I want to remind us a bit about the series that we're doing and some of our guidelines, our community brief. When we come into these conversations, our idea in Prospects for Peace is to bring you different grassroots organizations who are working on the ground in Israel and Palestine to hopefully give us hope, to give us different perspectives. Each organization has a different vision, a different way of work, and also addresses a different part of the conflict, whether from a holistic part or a specific part, like we've seen with some of the other organizations. And we know that this topic is personal and emotional for all of us. So we want to make sure that we are respectful and that we build community through listening to these speakers and to these programs. So just to remind us, when we're speaking, please speak from a place of I. Don't expect your personal experience to, don't state them as a fact, but rather as a personal experience. It's great for you to share your personal experiences and beliefs, but don't assume that they are held by others. Be curious, be open to listening. We might hear some things that may be difficult for us to hear, but that's okay. Take a minute, take a breath, absorb what you've heard and process it, and be curious about it. You don't have to agree with what you hear. We want to learn from diverse opinions, and we want to help ourselves develop our own perspectives and ask thoughtful questions. And of course, please use respectful and kind language and assume good intentions from all and every of the participants. And again, thank you all for being here on this lovely afternoon. And thank you especially to Rula and May for being here to speak with us. I don't want to take too much of our time, so I'm going to go directly to you, and we ask each of you if you are willing to introduce yourselves first and A Land for All, and then we'll dive into some questions. So Rula or May, whoever would like to start.
It's really a pleasure to be with you today. My name is, I'm Israeli. I'm talking to you right now from Jaffa, next to Tel Aviv. I am mother of 2, and I'm a human rights lawyer by training. I think that maybe I'll start from just sharing a little bit about what got me to this work. I think that, it's so easy to dive right into answers, but I think it's also important to start with questions, with what we don't know, the things that we still don't know, and that have led us to these journeys that force us to push forward truth and justice. So for me, I grew up in a very political household here in Tel Aviv. I'm always, when I talk to American Jewish crowd, I feel, in a way at home. Although I didn't grow up in the States, nor do I have really American family so much, but when I did live in America for a few years in the US, I suddenly realized that my Jewish identity is very different from what I thought it was growing up here in a secular, liberal community in Tel Aviv. And I think that I say that for 2 reasons, both because I miss it. I miss having a Jewish community that is not based on supremacy and connected, dependent only on a national identity. I miss having sources of Judaism that are oriented to my values as a Jew. And so I really appreciate you inviting us today, and I feel strongly, that we really need to do this work together as Jews. And the other reason why I wanted to start from that is because as a human rights lawyer, who really was advocating for many years against the occupation and for human rights, and dedicated to universal liberal work of international law. My master's is in human rights and international law. Um, Moving to the States and learning about my own Jewish identity um, has pushed me to ask some difficult questions about why I do what I do. And in that why I do what I do, and we can talk later about like inspirational rabbis in my life, but one of them was Marshall Gans, who I was lucky enough to meet while living in the States. And when he asked me, like, why do you want to end the occupation? Like, why do you want to why are you doing this work of justice and human rights? And I was like, I'm an international lawyer, that's what we're supposed to do, fight for justice. And he was like, no, no, but really why? It took me a long time to admit that I'm doing it because of my Jewish identity and because of my Jewish background, because the trauma that I carry in my own bones and in my own blood, because I know what it's like in my blood and in my family history to be a victim. And I know that there's a circle and cycle that we are a part of. And that if I'm lucky enough to live in such a privileged time in a way, to be Jewish, to have a homeland, to have some sort of safety, and I'm talking, before October 7th, obviously, um, that doesn't mean that I don't have to continue to fight for my safety and for others people's safety and equality. Because the right for the fight for injustice, the fight against racism, the fight against anti-Semitism and xenophobia, and they're all connected. And now I'm on top, and then I'll be on bottom, and realizing that I'm actually doing this work not because I need to save Rula and not because I need to save Palestinians and not that I need to end the occupation because it's unjust and immoral, and which it is. But the real reason was that I have a baby and I want my baby to be safe. And if I want my baby to be safe, I know that I need to end this conflict. There is no way for me to be safe in this world before this conflict ends. There is no way for me to be safe in this world before Palestinians are free and liberated. And then I will be free and liberated. And I don't mean this in an intellectual, philosophical point of view. I mean this because I'm experiencing this on my body every day, running to the shelter and knowing people who die every year because of this conflict. And so I actually, yeah, I got to a place where I really shifted my politics in regards to the why. And the why stopped being saving someone else and it started being saving myself. And from that point of view, I shifted from doing human rights work actually to work of vision and future building, because I got to a place where I started having very difficult questions about how are we going to end this conflict? How are we going to end occupation? How are we going to have what does Zionism look in this reality? What does it mean to be an Israeli? I don't have another home. I have one home and it's Israel. But what do I do with this home when it's breaking and falling apart in so many ways? And that pushed me to a very actually dark moment of despair, because I felt that the vision that I was given, which is, I would say, the classic two-state solution vision of two states separate, kind of not seeing each other, not thinking about each other. We put Palestinians behind a wall. We forget about you guys. Thank you so much. And we will be, part of America or part of, London and Paris. And you guys can go to Cairo and Jordan. But I had to kind of confront the reality that dream or fantasy is very, very distant from reality, for many, many reasons. But I was confronted with the reality of spending time in Israel, being Israeli, living in Israel, Palestine, and realizing that our future is interconnected, that Israelis and Palestinians are interdependent, and that if we continue to normalize or shrink or manage the conflict and be complicit with the status quo of talking about a two-state solution while knowing for the facts on the ground that the way that we perceive it right now is impossible to implement, we are part of the problem. And that if I, as like the, an active on the ground activist for so many years, who I'm so committed to this and starting to lose belief and faith in this vision, then I'm in trouble. I can't raise my kids here if I don't have hope and faith, if I don't believe that I'm fighting for the right cause, if I don't know where I'm going, if I don't have that articulate vision to walk towards. And it was from that place of confusion and from disappointment and from growing up, I guess, maturing and having kids of my own and understanding that no one else is going to come and save me. It's not going to be my parents, and it's not going to be the US, and it's not going to be the EU, and it's not going to be the UN. And maybe it'll be Saudi. Maybe we'll see about the Saudis. But the fact that no one is going to come and save me means that I have to take responsibility and ownership over my narrative and over my future and over this place. And that's why I joined A Land for All, for my children and for their future, and knowing that if I don't articulate and promote and push and do everything I can to promote the best possible, sustainable, and viable solution, the best possible viable two-state solution version that Israelis and Palestinians can both connect with, and that feels that they are represented through, and that is coherent with 30 years of a huge shift in reality that we need to address and articulate that vision and make it into a political vision that people can actually follow and believe, I actually might not have a future here. Yeah, so that's a short, long version of why I do this work and why I'm here today.
Thank you, May. Thank you so much for sharing and being so personal and giving us a perspective. I think, like the rest of the people here on the webinar, we're so eager to hear more about how you translate that future and what is the actual vision. But we do want to meet Rula first and hear your story and your journey to this point.
Hi everyone, and thank you for the invitation to speak to this community. I heard a lot about the community and the synagogue, and I do believe I know some people. I'm sure I know some people from there personally. I will try to be much more short because we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, I'm a Palestinian citizen of the state of Israel, but today I'm speaking to you from Ramallah, where I'm mainly based, but not only. I move between the spaces all the time. I'm based in Ramallah. That was my decision before a couple of years when I returned back after a long years in Germany, where I did my PhD in political science and used to teach at the university there. I decided to get involved in the Palestinian academia, and I spent actually the majority of the last maybe 20 years in this field, in the academia, and mainly teaching, working on the Palestinian nationality, the Middle Eastern context, and Israel, Palestine, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But I was born and raised in the northern part of Israel. I joined in Land for All from the very academic perspective, because I was looking for something or a context or a platform how to translate my research, my academic ideas that I was busy with. And I tried actually, to be honest, or I was involved in doing some activism within the One Democratic State campaign or solution. until I slowly, when I started to get involved in Palestinian and Israeli academic institutions, that the majority of the Israeli Jews and the Palestinians are not in a post-national mindset, and speaking about one state for both people, for both national groups, is illusionary. And I found by the political vision that we both advocate for and lead a kind of compromise between speaking about these two edges of the spectrum that we hear about among the majority of the Palestinians and the Jews in the diaspora and in the homeland, that the classic two states and the one democratic state solution. So what we offer is a kind of integrative model that combines elements from both. And that's why I joined A Land for All maybe before 3 years, something like that. And October 7th and the war after that actually were, for me, turning points in terms of my engagement with A Land for All. I decided to accept the offer of the joint Palestinian-Israeli board that was established actually a couple of weeks before October 7th, to be the Palestinian co-director of this organization and movement. And I will explain a little bit more about that. But before, I would like to share something which is actually related to the answer why October 7th and why the war brought me to take this decision to shift from the academic, comfortable place, theoretical, to do this work in a very difficult time, actually. And here there are two main reasons. First of all, personal. It was about my fears and about my emotions and about the decision to decide to do something from the very understanding that if I don't get involved in doing something, to take this atrocity since October 7th into something positive, I won't be able to breathe, actually, if I continue also to live here. And the second person, which is much more political, I believe that October 7th and the war after that are not, again, another violent episode in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. No, these are formative turning moments in our history, in our national collective being, Jewish Israelis and maybe Jews in general, and Palestinians. We had the first turning point in 48 by the establishment of the State of Israel, which is considered the Nakba of the Palestinian people. The second maybe turning point in the history of the conflict was the year 67, where we had another very important historical point in the history of the Palestinian nationality, the nature of the conflict to start moving from an Arab-Israeli conflict into Palestinian conflict, where actually during this war and later on in 73, the establishment of the State of Israel didn't continue to be questioned by the regional Arab countries and became much more a Palestinian issue or Palestinian-Israeli issue, and October 7th. And in all of these three major historical moments of the history of the conflict, the main approach of both sides was actually to defeat each other. And I could see that on October 7th. Actually, and here there is another political personal issue that brought me to do this work. I was questioning actually who gave the right to Hamas to decide for the Palestinian people to go into war. What are the boundaries of our resistance as Palestinians in resisting the occupation? What are the ethical boundaries and principles that we need even we are living under occupation? What are the ethical principles and the moral issues that we need to take care of and to ensure? All of these questions are very important internal Palestinian questions that I'm busy with. And despite the atrocities and the despair and the fears that all of us share from different positions, being Jewish Americans or Jewish Israelis or Palestinians in the West Bank or citizens of the state of Israel or in Gaza or in the diaspora. I'm sure that we all share these feelings of despair, fear, and confusion and helpless actually also, and a lot of anxiety toward the future. And this is the main resources that actually brought me to decide to do this work. And the last point is that despite what I'm explaining about the tendency that we see since October 7th in a very intensive way, started by the brutal attack of Hamas in October 7th, trying to defeat or to start a war against Israel, and continued by the horrible war that the Israeli government is practicing against the Palestinian people and especially on Gaza. I'm sure that nobody is going to defeat anybody. And usually after wars or following wars, even if I don't want to speak about other experiences in the history and in the world, speaking only about our experience over the past maybe 100 years, from this zero-sum game of defeating each other, I choose from my very personal national standing point as a Palestinian, but also as a citizen of the state of Israel, to choose the other way, to go away from this approach of defeating each other. And I believe that this will be the case. Maybe we cannot see it, but we have to think of how can we, after we are going to fail in defeating each other, how can we live together here? And this is actually what we are offering in our political vision. A new way that consider the fears, that consider the collective memories, that consider our very deep collective national desires of both people, even those who don't live here. We are speaking about two national groups that are diasporic national groups. We cannot ignore the Jewish diaspora and the Palestinian diaspora. We cannot close our eyes from the very deep fears that all of us have, Palestinians and Israelis, and we cannot also not to learn from our failures that we made when we tried to make peace or agreements and so on. So we need now to acknowledge that we are not going to defeat each other. And it's not moral even to try to defeat each other. It's not human. We need to find a new way how to live together here. And this is actually land for all.
Well, thank you, Rula, so much for sharing and being, both of you really, for being so vulnerable. And what also, I just want to do a personal acknowledgement of your academia and sort of noticing that within your speech and bringing us with some terminology and some history of the conflict as well, of understanding. You both shared your emotions around it, but also sharing a bit of the intellectual, historical surroundings. I do want to highlight, because you both mentioned sort of a one-state solution, a two-state solution. Why don't you bring us to a land for all? What is a land for all's vision? And I think then I'm also going to add on to it, how do you make that vision happen? So just what is the vision? What is the solution that you're suggesting? And what are the practicalities of your work? How do you make it come about? I'll let you decide who would like to start.
So thank you, Michal, and thank you, Rula. A land for all, I'll start with the end. I'll start with really what it is, and then I'll maybe say a few sentences of why, and then I'll let Rula talk a little bit maybe about the reality. So a land for all is also called two states, one homeland. A land for all is what we call a new vision. Some would say that it's a two-state solution that can work. Some will call it a confederation model. Some would say it's a whole new idea. It doesn't really matter to us as much the way that the box that we put it in. But the idea is this. At this point of time, Israelis and Palestinians are not in a post-national state of mind. Israelis want the state of Israel and the right for self-determination and safety and security, and so do the Palestinians. So we are absolutely starting from the two-state solution. We are advocating for a two-state solution. However, we understand that the classic two-state solution is based upon a paradigm of fragmentation and segregation and separation that is impossible at this point of time, meaning that it was perhaps possible 30 years ago, also with some problems back then. But at this point, it's not possible. And furthermore, it's probably also not the desirable end game. And so what we're saying is that we need to start observing reality as it is, and starting from the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground lead us to the one homeland paradigm. So yes, two states, two independent, sovereign, democratic states, Israel and Palestine, 67 border. I think that part is pretty clear, and we know a lot about that. But the one homeland paradigm is where we kind of have an added value. And there are two parts to that, two components to the one homeland. One, first is that Israelis and Palestinians both have a very strong attachment to the entire homeland, meaning that for Palestinian Jaffa, where I am right now, will always and forever be Palestine. You can put a border and you could put a gate, and you can call it whatever you want, but Jaffa will always be Palestine. So will Haifa and Akka and Lod and Ramle and Beersheba. For Jews, whether we like it or not, Shiloh will always be in our hearts part of Israel. So will Hebron. Now, at this point, we normally say, okay, we have to separate, right? We have to put a big wall in the middle, and we have to separate the two places and kind of try to ignore this sense of attachment to the homeland. But we start from that point. So instead of running to the zero-sum game mentality, we say, wait, we share this homeland. That's a very strong starting point. We share attachment, we share desire, we share love to this place. What if we don't see that as an obstacle? We see that as an opportunity. Because if you ignore the very strong sense of attachment and love and commitment to the entire homeland of both people, you're missing something very, very important that will then become an obstacle. The second component of the shared homeland is that we're interdependent, meaning that our water and natural resources, meaning that if we want to take care of public health, of a polio disease coming from Gaza a few months ago, or from COVID coming from Israel a few months ago, you can't deal with those things separately. You just can't. Soil pollution, air pollution, water, Jerusalem, everywhere you look, you see the interdependency. So how do you tackle that? Again, one way is to say we separate. And then in 100 years, we'll learn how to live with each other. The other way is to say we share the homeland, we share interest, we share the future. Let's try to find a way around it that will benefit all of us and that will be a viable and sustainable solution. And the shared homeland is translated into shared institutions, not instead of the sovereignty of the two states, without touching the sovereignty of the two states, but adding another level of shared institutions similar to the EU model. Okay, so an institution taking care of human rights, an institution taking care of public health on certain issues, issues of economy, some issues of security cooperation, because as we know, security segregation hasn't led us to safety and security. What has allowed Israeli Jews to live in safety and security has been much more the cooperation with the Palestinian Authority rather than big walls that have not ensured our safety. And so the basic idea is this: two separate sovereign states in a one homeland paradigm, meaning that we have shared institutions to take care of the things that we have to take care of jointly. We just have to in order to survive and deal with the actual huge challenges that are here beyond the conflict. A shared Jerusalem. Jerusalem will be a shared city. It's the capital of both states. It will be a shared city. The fourth principle that we're advocating for is freedom of movement, and moving slowly, gradually, with all of the security measures needed into freedom of residency. And here I again refer us to the EU. And so the fact that French people can live in Germany is not a security threat, neither a demographic threat, if they're residents and not citizens. I'll say, maybe Rula, you can elaborate a little bit about that later. And the last principle that we advocate for is not trying to rectify one injustice with another. A land for all is not only about ending the occupation, it's about ending the conflict. Meaning that we have to offer a solution that will talk to the needs, the emotional, collective, psychological needs of both people, and will lead us to a place of reconciliation. And so when we talk about residency and citizenship and freedom of movement, freedom of residency, we don't want to push some people out of their homes in order to create justice and then create another cycle of violence and revenge and hatred. And so in our model, Palestinians have the right of return to Palestine because refugees is an issue that we have to address. And then some of them gradually will be able to reside in their actual homeland, which is not Ramallah, it's Yafa. And not to compare, but to say that Jews will therefore also be able to live in Palestine as permanent residents of Palestine. They will vote for the Knesset, but they will be able to reside in Palestine, meaning that if we take everything I said, which is pretty dense, we can unpack it in a minute. If we take everything I said, what we're imagining is a two-state solution with a confederal extra layer, like the EU, that allows us to tackle all the classic deadlocks of the classic two-state solution that have prevented us from moving ahead and achieving peace until today. Refugees, settlers, water, Jerusalem, borders. And just to end and pass it on to Rula to maybe talk about the more principles behind it. We are a group of, at this point, hundreds of Israelis and Palestinians, even more. But dozens of Israelis and Palestinians have been sitting for more than 10 years together, jointly, for hundreds of hours. People who are experts, people who are activists and lawyers and academics, and people who have been part of previous negotiations and know where the problems and mistakes lie. They know. And from that that perspective, from lessons learned, from mistakes learned, from the facts on the ground of what can happen and cannot happen, from comparative literature of other conflicts that have been solved, from looking reality in the eye, and that means both emotionally, psychologically, but also on the ground, what water tells us, what climate tells us, what healthcare tells us, what economy tells us, have created and crafted, co-created a solution that can be viable and has the potential of actually working, and acceptable by both people, because it was created by them, by us, for us.
Thank you. Rula, you wanted to continue?
Well, yeah, maybe few points. You know, we could go directly to the two-state solution, okay? Because we at the center of our political vision, we still have the two-state solution, the same borders, but we have the different approach behind it, or the paradigm. We move from segregation and separation into the paradigm of sharing the whole homeland. But it's not only that there were deadlocks of the classic two-state solution, as Mai described, the right of return of the Palestinian people, the settlements and the settlers, Jerusalem as a shared capital or city, and so on, that nobody had good answers and solutions for that in the old classic framework of the two-state solution. But there were no real intentions also to deal with these points. But still, we could go there, and we can offer our solutions, our very creative solutions for all of these deadlocks. But we need to remember two things. First of all, we cannot, after 30 years, refer to something that we tried before 30 years, where Israel was different than Israel today, where the Palestinian people and the Palestinian political powers and parties were different. You know, Hamas before 30 years was a very small, tiny group. He wasn't part of the Palestinian political system. All of us changed, and I'm not speaking about the geopolitical changes and transformations that we had over the past 3 decades, and not the global transformations. So we cannot not to update the political vision that we are speaking about. To speak about realpolitik, you know, before going deep into the problem points and obstacles of the classic two-state solution. The second point is that we started from recognition and reconciliation. It's not another peace initiative. And we are not speaking about only peace agreement. Peace agreement, we can, you know, both parties can under pressure or under any other reason can sign tomorrow. The same that what we had actually 93, when we Israelis and Palestinians woke up one day and we heard that the PLO and the Israeli government are going to sign a peace agreement in Washington. We need something much more deeper in order to continue living here together after the whole atrocities that we've been speaking about in the first part of this webinar. We need reconciliation, and before the reconciliation, we need the recognition, mutual recognition of the right of both people to claim belonging to this place. Historically, theologically, whatever we want. And the right to claim the right for self-determination in two nation states, Bayit Leumi, for two people. We need to acknowledge that. And we need to acknowledge also the very deep, not only attachment, but emotional aspects of being Jewish people and Palestinian people, of the conflict or the experiences of the conflict, but also before the conflict. We are not coming to solve this problem and to think about how can we live together. You know, we are not Swiss, we are not Swedish. We are Jews and Palestinians, and all of us has a very heavy package on our backs. We need to acknowledge that. And that's why we need to speak about real recognition and historical reconciliation between the people, in order to be able to maintain a viable future and a viable solution. So
Rula, I am taking responsibility for both of us, because we can talk if you need us to, let's go to Q&A, because otherwise we can just, we're here doing this and we can talk forever. So
yeah.
So
no,
we are open to
to
any question, and you are welcome to continue reading about us. There are a lot of resources to get to know more about the political vision itself.
No, I really appreciate it, and thank you, Maya, also for sort of saying our time is running short, and we're already getting a lot of questions from our participants. And I think the reason we're getting so many questions from our participants is because this is, in a way, such a new idea, and it's something that we haven't heard before. And I think both of you have very successfully addressed a lot of things that when we talk about the conflict and when we talk about solutions, a lot of people sort of bring up, right? The reconciliation process, and how do we deal with, acknowledging the fear on both sides and finding a solution. We are getting a question that I think also I had a bit in my mind, which is about the extremists in both sides, right? We're talking a lot about reconciliation, but we know, and Rula, you kind of mentioned Hamas and how Hamas became a very strong political power, and clearly with a very specific sort of point of view. And I'm going to use Hamas as like a brand name for extremists within the Palestinian nationalist movement. And I will also name Israeli extremist nationalists within the Israeli population and the Jewish population. How do we bring them into your vision, right? How do you work within this sort of idea of, I think more of, again, the question is the practicality. How do you bring the people, both Palestinians and the Jews, into this mindset of what you're talking about within the context of the extremists?
Ani?
Well, okay, you can start.
Ani, okay. We're now practicing not both answering every question, because we always have so much to say. So we'll just I'll just try to be very brief in my response. One of the things that we've learned from previous attempts in Israel-Palestine to make peace, and specifically from the Oslo Accords, was the problem with the lack of an endgame. The Oslo Accord was a historic moment, but it failed in presenting an endgame. And by not presenting that endgame, it allowed for spoilers to navigate a new way out of the Oslo terminology into what we're seeing today, into this actually zero-sum game of trying to annihilate each other. And so A Land for All is extremely committed to an endgame, and that endgame includes a Palestinian sovereign state, and it includes the confederation, or this kind of an agreement that will allow for a viable Palestinian state side by side with a viable Israel state. And so that's number one. Lessons learned. We learn from the past. It's one of our commitments at A Land for All. We have to present an endgame. We have to know where we're going. Otherwise, everyone will try to take us elsewhere. That's exactly what happened with Kahana, with Ben Gvir, with Hamas, etc. Number two is that A Land for All is committed to international law and to human rights. Absolutely no question about it. But it starts from a different point of view. It starts from an emotional perspective and relationship to this homeland. And by starting from the emotional attachment to the homeland, which is something that Jews and Palestinians share, you actually start from a much more inclusive point of view and starting point, meaning that the people who are part of A Land for All are religious. We have settlers who support A Land for All. We have ultra-Orthodox who support a land for all. We have traditional people and people from the periphery and Mizrahi Jews supporting creating a land for all. We're part of the creation process. That is the strength of our movement, that it's an inclusive movement that starts from the emotional needs, the psychological needs that have been ignored and have pushed most of the Israeli and Palestinian society out in previous negotiations. So I would say that we are in that way the most well positioned to present a viable vision that will speak to the most diverse groups and communities in Israel and Palestine.
And that's very, very interesting. And I do want to persist, and I do want to persist because I think it's something that we are sort of looking at. I would like to hear a bit more about the practicalities, like other than sharing the vision, like who are you sharing the vision with? Is it political parties? Is it lawmakers? Is it culture? Like who are the ones that you're trying to get this vision to actually create the change?
Well, our advocacy and public engagement and political engagement and research and policy strategies are developing all the time, and we work with the Israeli society, with the Israeli Jewish society, and as Mai said, we reach out to all groups of people. During the last 1.5 years, it was hard to reach to very right-wing people, and we don't think that we have a conversation with these people because they have their own vision, especially when it comes to the supporters of the current Israeli government and the government itself, in terms of the politicians and the political parties, except of these very, I would say, even fanatic, very right-wing political persons, figures, and parties and their supporters. We reach out to everyone in the Israeli society as well as the Palestinian society. In the homeland, we speak also with Jews and Palestinians in the diaspora. We do a lot of international advocacy. We've been meeting governments, foreign ministers, delegations, diplomats, kings in the region, in the whole world, the American administration, the EU, and so on, because October 7th and the war brought the issue of the occupation and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to the public agenda again, and we hear again about the need to solve the conflict and to have a Palestinian state and to end the violence and so on. So we are using this opportunity actually in order to advocate for a new two-state solution. And we have a lot of successes on this arena. We don't have successes in terms of the political will of all of these actors on the international arena to really push the Palestinians and the Israelis, or the Palestinian decision makers and the Israeli government toward a solution or negotiation. But I think there is a shift now over the past couple of weeks, and we work with young people, we work with students, and we develop the political vision itself that we have in terms of research and policy in order to develop the political vision into an action plan for the negotiators to be on the table of the negotiation when the day is going to come, be it in 1 year from now or in 10 years or 20 years. We need to be prepared for the moment.
Great, thank you. And actually, Rula, you mentioned it, and there was a question also, because you talked a bit about the neighboring countries or the countries of the world, and someone did ask, like, maybe more specifically, I think, of the countries who have been so involved in the conflict so far, countries like Egypt and Jordan, Syria, even now with their new leadership. What are their sort of reactions to the plans, if you've had contact with more of the Middle Eastern countries. The UAE, of course, the Saudis, can't forget them.
Yeah, actually, with the Syrians, not yet. I'm not sure that we want to be in this position, but I can guarantee that we met of the major countries, like the most of what you mentioned, and maybe much more. We hear a lot of positive feedback. The majority of the international community, including the Middle Eastern countries and regimes, they acknowledge that they cannot continue speaking about the two-state solution without bringing some new content to this new old approach. And I hope that we are going to be much more, major actor in the coming, for example, international conference in New York in less than 2 weeks. We are already involved in all of these conventions around the world that trying to develop the old framework of the two-state solution into a new one. And yeah, we are all over the places and doing a lot of efforts in order to bring this new terminology of recognition and reconciliation and new two states solution into the real official conversation.
Great. Thank you, Rula. We do also have a question, and I think maybe if you can both answer, or Maya, if it's your turn, to speak a bit about your obstacles. Like a bit of maybe the reaction, because you've been speaking a lot of the positive reaction. We'd also like to hear maybe some of the not so positive reaction, and who does it come from? Like, do you see it in maybe specific groups in Israeli-Palestinian society? Do you see it somewhere else? Like, what are some of your obstacles?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I would say that our biggest obstacle is despair. I think that people are scared and in a survival mode, not to compare what's happening in Gaza to what's happening in Tel Aviv to what's happening in New York. But I think we're all scared, as Rula said. And despair makes people cynical, and despair makes people not open to think about anything beyond tomorrow. And despair makes people run away and give up, or choose to be comfortably numb and just give their vote to whatever, or become much more extreme. And we are here to fight despair with hope, because that's the only way to fight despair. But hope, as our friend Maozi Non says so beautifully, hope is an action. Hope is not something you can sell. Hope is something that people need to do, to be active about and to actually be activated by. And so on one hand, that is our biggest obstacle. The fact that people are complicit, the fact that people are scared of change, the fact that people really rather just like opt out and ignore and be complicit in horrific things and realities, or choose to become more extreme and radical and racist. And us holding that alternative is very heavy in these days. But it is also our biggest resource. It also what allows us to grow. When I learned about a land for all for the first time, I was so shocked by the fact that that I don't have to live in this binary of, oh, the two state is not going to work and the one state is not going to work, and so there's really nothing I can do. And that feeling of inability to take action over my own future led me to despair. And when I heard about a land for all, and this is an experience that we have every day with Saudi and with Egypt and with folks in the US and with scholars and with diplomats and with decision makers who have been investing 20 years of their life to promoting the two-state solution and peace in Israel-Palestine, have become fallen into despair and disbelief and cynical around, oh, it's never going to work. You know, it's never going to, forget about it, it's never going to work. We tried everything. And then we come with this idea and their mind is blown because some very courageous people who have been suffering and dealing with this on the ground have come together to offer something beyond that binary. And that is the I don't know, the secret ingredient, right? Of Israelis and Palestinians being courageous enough to say, this is not working, we have to come up with something better, and coming up with something better. And so just to give you a sense, this year we presented the Munich Security Council. The Munich Security Council is the highest security conference in the world. And we were invited to present Land for All in the security framework. We are partnering with IPI, with the International Peace Institute. We are, in the past two weeks, more than 400 people signed to join a Land for All in Israel, just in Israel, 400 people in 2 weeks. We've had 100 events that we were invited to participate in the past 3 months. There is such thirst and need for alternative, for hope, for a positive vision for the future, because we haven't had any. People really, really need this. They need something that can work. They need something that represents them, and they need something that they can really believe in to create the political change, to change whatever is happening now and choose a better future. And so it's our biggest obstacle, but it's also this is the card that we have. We're not only selling hope, we are the hope, right? We are doing the work, and hundreds and thousands of people have joined us since October 7th, both in Israel and in Palestine, in the international community. And it's been a real resource for us to be able to continue doing this work in this really, really impossible reality. I know that our time is up, so.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you so much. I didn't want to stop you because you were just answering my last question, but also, Rula, since we have one last minute, if you want to leave us with some words of hope, some inspiration, something to leave us with, as we are all excited to learn more and continue following your organization.
Two short points. First of all, the second or another obstacle is the current Israeli government. This government doesn't care about the Jewish people, the Israelis, so I don't expect them to care about me as a Palestinian. And I think we need all of us to do something in order to get rid of this government. They are real main obstacle. The last point that I would like to end with, as I said, despair and fears and hopeless attitude are not a political language that we can live with, all of us. And in order to save this place and both people who live here, all of us need to take action from this despair and difficult moment. And there are options. We are doing the work. Just join us, support us, contact us. We are doing the work. We need only your support behind us. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Maya and Rula, so much for being here. We're already a minute over time, but we really appreciate it, and giving us hope and something to look forward to, and such I think I talked to a lot of our congregants about what is the solution, and you are actually offering a viable, practical solution, whether we agree with it or not, but it's something to listen, it's something to open our minds. So we want to thank you all very much. We want to thank everyone who joined us for Prospects for Peace. We have one more organization that we'll be hearing from, I believe, on June 18th, but I might be mistaken. Please check the central website. I don't know if Rabbi Berman says something about our last Prospects for Peace session, but thank you all very much, and thank you so much, Mai and Rula and Aaron from A Land for All and the entire Land for All team, and of course Marina and Rabbi Berman from Central Synagogue.
Thank you all so much for being here. Hopefully we will see you on June 16th for an evening with the Israel Policy Forum, our final program in the Prospects for Peace series this summer, with a final opportunity on June 26th to have a conversation with Michal and myself about what you've heard, what you've learned, what you've felt, and your thoughts on the prospects there are for peace. Thank you all so much for joining us. Take good care.